to show you that Microsoft is part of these discussions, which are completely diplomatic, having things to do with like the Iraq wars and people at a national level using intelligence agencies to train people to hack into somebody else's government and to try to prove these things. So it's kind of interesting if you concentrate on the software side of things. And I think if you go far, you could actually end up having this show about politics, and I think we don't want that. So.
Sorry, Gordon, did you have anything to add? Because I noticed that you've got a link here in regards to Wikileaks. Have you got something that you want to put forward?
Well, yeah, it was just there's a lot of things that have happened about WikiLeaks, and as Roy says, we don't really want to be going into any depth really about them because we could be here for another full show essentially. But it was one sum up in Ars Technica. And it basically says the info war is on as WikiLeaks is forced to keep jumping servers and as various entities try to figure out ways to silence WikiLeaks and others. There was one about the French, I think it was a French company, was asking its own government or asking its own courts whether WikiLeaks is legal to be hosted in France or mirrored in France. And it basically gives a sum up of the fact that the establishment are really bearing down to silence WikiLeaks and that the info war is on.
I wanted to mention something really extremely important. I see people don't really know that. They think WikiLeaks is out, or that the Cablegate is out. No, only about 0.4% of the thing is out. It's only about, I think now it's about 800 cables out of 250,000 of them. So if you can think of what this caused the past week, think about this happening every week at the same scale for almost 10 years. Every week you have this number of leaks coming out, causing extreme damage every week for 10 years. And what they try to do now, and this is why there is true danger that the site won't survive, is they released some documents today. I saw about 30 or 20 or something they did today on December 4th, and the reason they do it like that is because they have to tag things, they have to remove sensitive information from them. But they actually do try and do that as a core team. They try to ensure they keep a certain level of quality. But what they do also is they try to spread the very up-to-date torrent for people to put on their site. So if you find a mirror of the site, the question is how new is it? And also how do you get the latest updates to be put on all the the different sites and distributed. So I'm in favor of having WikiLeaks online for reasons I said before. I'm not going to talk about whether I agree with what they do, and I don't agree with everything they do and certain things and the way they approach these issues. But I think it's extremely important because of the issue of precedence. I think if they manage to take down WikiLeaks, they basically send out a message and also a warning and also a preparation that any website that posts so-called objectionable material, even if it's completely true and raw and there is no interpretation by the people, they just give you the documents as they are. If they can take this down, if they can force this down, if they can try to choke people and take down the PayPal account and starve people financially, not over terrorism, but basically overtaking something that's scandalous, that actually shows you as scandalous they should do to justify a whistleblowing action. If they can take this down, we kind of are in trouble. It means we cannot use the internet. Even our own site can be taken down for hosting something that's true. That's just, verified to be true. So now Switzerland, I think, is one of the big harbors. You have Iceland to a certain degree, and you have the pirate parties in certain countries, but you don't always have, nobody in politics really wants to endorse this thing too easily. You have very few people who are politicians who say, we need to have this thing online, unless there are people in the pirate parties.
One thing that has came out of this is the fact that people are seeing the blatant attempts by various governments to shut them down. And there's people who, on one side, want that to happen, but similarly, there's people on the other side who are desperate to make sure it doesn't. So there's people now mirroring WikiLeaks and putting up different places. So it gets harder and harder for them to take it down. I mean, I suggested why don't, if you can't get to the domain, if the domain doesn't resolve because no DNS will take it for WikiLeaks, why don't they have their own DNS server to do that? Or why don't they sell T-shirts with the IP address of the server?
They do that
on
now.
It
Did you see that? Did they actually do that? They have a T-shirt now.
I suggested that. I suggested that as just something, a throwaway thing that I thought about in Identica. I didn't realise they did that.
Yeah, it does exist. I posted something about it today. There is a T-shirt now with IP addresses on it.
It seems obvious, really.
Well, I'm sure whatever comes out in the next few weeks, certainly the mainstream news is concentrating on the WikiLeaks, and it's certainly been the story's been taken up by them. I was listening to some random American radio station today from, I think it was Kentucky, some sort of area like that, and they dedicated about 3 hours to talking just about WikiLeaks and their views on it. We'll move on to the next subject now. Roy, have you got another title for us, or
yeah, well, an extremely important news, I think, from the point of view of Linux, and that's the Chrome OS from Google is supposed to be allegedly, or by rumors, is supposed to be released on the 7th, which I think is like 2 days from now, or so that'll be like Tuesday.
Yeah, Tuesday. Yes.
Yeah. But it's not for sure yet. So one side that I'm looking at two sides. I think the original report was from Engadget, but what they say is because of WikiLeaks, nothing is going to be extremely important now, and I think it's a really bad time for anyone to release news even 1 week after the big revelations, because even a person who's centered around software, and I've seen it myself in blogs now, the past week there is barely been much blogging in the Linux circles because everyone is kind of occupied with copyright. We haven't spoken about this before. I could actually do this later. Is one of the things you have coming out of the leaks is the demonstration that copyright laws are being written sometimes by the United States and then being passed or pushed or pressured, imposed on people using sanctions or using all kinds of forms of blackmail to have them accept the laws which would favor the United States-based corporations, Hollywood, and even the software companies in some cases. I just posted a thing about Korea and having a so-called free trade agreement, and put free in scare quotes, because what they try and do there is to squeeze software patents into Korea, where you have, and that's South Korea, by the way, where you have LG and Samsung, which already pay Microsoft for Android, because they are being pushed to accept software patents. And the same thing is kind of happening in Europe, but I think in Europe there is a lot of struggle against that, because people kind of know what's going on, and you have to make sure they still know about it, and expose the politicians that try and help the negotiators in the States.
As far as the whole push for patents thing, it seems to be coming largely from American companies. Now that to me is a symptom of the American system, the elite in the American system, the heads of the corporations. They essentially know that they cannot compete on a fair basis. They're not a producing company. So what they seek to do is essentially own ideas, and so that no one else can compete without basically propping them up. If someone wants to come into their market, they are forced legally to pay up money to the people who own the ideas. And the people who own the ideas are the same people who set up the systems to allow them to own the ideas, and then to force those systems out into other countries. So it's basically a racket to ensure their own survival, because they're not going to produce anything. They are still paid without actually doing anything in years down the line.
Well, I think it's quite ironic that, or coincidental, that we'll be covering, touching on a few of these topics in the discussion at the end, when we cover the headline. Microsoft is working towards establishing a long-term community connection. Certainly some of the things that Gordon mentioned are the remit of Microsoft, and we see Microsoft behaving in such a way. Sorry, Roy, I just wanted to throw that in, because obviously we'll move on the topic. We'll be having this discussion a bit later on, I think, So if you had anything else to add, Roy?
No, I was just going to talk about patents, but we probably should move on to a different subject.
Right.
State, so.
Well, Roy, back over to you if you've got another piece of news. I'm
Well,
holding
we
back
have,
for my features.
It's kind of